Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, warshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we are bringing you a first look at forthcoming Tier 10 American Premium Destroyer. This is USS Forrest Sherman. Forrest Sherman was recently announced, I think, on one of the streams over on the dev blog. She's sitting in our ports now here as a community contributor here on the NA server so that we can show you what the ship looks like in port, but obviously we can't show you gameplay and all that stuff yet. Them's the rules. That's the way the program has worked now for about the past year or so. Forrest Sherman has... This is a very strange ship. She's got a lot of weird things going on here. And over the course of the video, guys, you're going to hear me... I'm not very high on this ship, right? I have very, very few complimentary things to say about the current state of Forrest Sherman. Now, that is my paper opinion. Obviously, I have not played the ship yet, okay? You see here, I have no XP in it, so when I do a video like this, though I am allowed to play the ship, I flatly refuse to until I've done the video so that I don't have any opinion beyond what I have to work with, which is stats and numbers and everything. So let's have a look around here, guys, but I'm going to warn you going in, I don't really like where they're going with this ship right now. So I have so many concerns and questions, and we'll elaborate those as we go. Starting with survivability, as we always do, you see here 24,900 hit points. Pretty respectable for a Tier 10 destroyer. Now, a lot of Tier 10 destroyers have been coming out in the last year or so that have pretty robust health pools. I'm looking at you, Elbing, pick an easy example. And Forrest Sherman kind of follows that trend here. In fact, these class of ships is a post-war class of destroyers. Forrest Sherman herself was not laid down until 1953, not commissioned until 1955. This is basically her out-of-the-yard variant. Several of these boats were later converted to guided missile destroyers. Obviously, we don't have that in World of Warships. Thank God, yet. But she's got a fairly robust health pool there, pretty beefy. Incidentally, while I'm thinking about it, for those of you that live in the States, you might be interested in seeing one of these ships. One of the class has survived as a museum ship. That is USS Turner Joy. She is up in Bremerton, Washington, where there was an Anchors Away event back when we could still, meet and gather as if we were all still human beings. Anyway, so yeah, 25,000 hit points, not too shabby. Incidentally, this is about 5,500 more hit points than Gearing over in the tech tree at Tier 10. So she is easily the healthiest American destroyer. Unfortunately, one of the things that she lacks that many of the other beefy destroyers that have come to the game recently is armor. You see here, Forrest Sherman's armor scheme is 19 millimeters throughout. That means that pretty much every HE shell that she encounters in her travels will fuse on her hull and make a right royal mess of the ship. That's something that, again, I'll use Elbing as the easy example, but also Ragnar, for example, another one that's got some armor, or Habarovsk, right? There are some Tier 10 destroyers that have decent armor schemes. Unfortunately, despite her health pool, Forrest Sherman is not one of them. Maneuverability and concealment. 34 knots, 680 meters on the turning circle, 5.3 on the rudder shift. From a handling perspective, Forrest Sherman is going to handle like so many other Tier 10 destroyers. I'll give you, Druid is probably the nearest analog, but that's kind of a bad example because how hard Druid is to obtain. Gearing, I'll give you Gearing straight up as an example, right? Gearing is a 640 turning circle on a 4.3 rudder shift. Now, you're not going to be able to tell the difference with the rudder shift. The 640 turning circle, you probably will. Sherman also has, she's also longer overall than Gearing is, or at least she seems to me to be, right? Her superstructure is farther forward because she lacks that second forward turret that Gearing has, but she makes up for it with more going on in the stern. Gearing's upper works comes almost all the way back, and she has only the single turret at the stern. You see here Sherman, of course, obviously having the double turret arrangement back at the stern. Makes things the ship is just laid out differently, but she feels like she's got a longer overall length. Maybe I'd say probably about the same beam. She's wider in the beam than a Fletcher for sure. So she's probably more like in Gearing in terms of beam than you want her to be. I'm not a huge fan of how Gearing handles, and this ship looks like she's going to handle kind of like a Gearing, or at least a similar analog. So yeah, right now, not a huge fan. Now, one other thing I want to point out, 33.9 knots. Worst in tier. Forrest Sherman is the slowest Tier 10 destroyer by over a knot, just over a knot. She steals this crown away from Vampire Deuce, who has a 35 knot top speed. Although technically Holland, Ragnar, and Smaland also all have 35 knot top speeds. But the bottom line is Forrest Sherman, slower than all of them. Slower than all of them. So that's not encouraging, right? I mean, you're in a tier where there are a non-zero number of predatory tier 10 gunboats. I'm looking at you, Kleber or Delny or Zorki or something like this, right? Habarovsk, like Kleber and Marceau. Like, these ships will run you down. I mean, a Marceau and a Kleber and a Delny start off with a 10 knot advantage. 10 knots. They are 25% faster than you. Yikes. Or 33 technically. So yeah, ouch. Not good. Not good. Concealment, 8-0 even on the surface. That's with her fancy stock camo you see here. When we full stealth rig this ship down for stealth, 6.5 kilometers on the surface. Obviously not worst in tier. A lot of those other gunboats that we've talked about at tier 10 are worse in the stealth department. But this is not anything to get excited about. And this is where things start to go off the rails for me, right? Like, as we're in maneuverability and concealment, this is where things really start to fall off for me. I don't care for how gearing handles. This thing looks on paper like it's going to handle like a gearing. She's not that stealthy. 6.5 kilometers on the surface is really not anything to get excited about at tier 10, right? There's plenty of really good destroyers with more stealth than this. Better gunboats even. So, like, what is happening here? Already I have serious concerns about where we're at with Forrest Sherman. But wait, there's more. Forrest Sherman's main battery is comprised of three single-barreled 125 millimeter guns. These are the 54 caliber barrels. These are the same turrets you will basically find, or at least the same kind of style of turret, the same style of gun you will find aboard USS Austin, Tier 10 American cruiser. And similarly to Austin, she packs two different kinds of shells. That is the high explosive and the semi-armor piercing. So this is interesting armament for a gunboat. I'm trying to remember if we have... Do we have another gunboat with SAP? I don't think we do yet. Oh, we do, actually. Technically, Paolo Emilio. Paolo Emilio has SAP. But Paolo Emilio's guns are like on like a 9 or a 10-second reload. Forrest Sherman's are on a 1.5 seconds. That reload time of 2 seconds you see there has already been buffed over in the devlog. They've already announced a 25% increase to that number. Forrest Sherman's guns reload in a 1.5 seconds. From a DPM perspective, that means that this ship is honestly quite the monster, all right? From a DPM perspective, her SAP shells... how did I log this in the sheet? Looks like we did the SAP... Yeah, okay. So the SAP shells, the SAP DPM comes in around 325,000 damage per minute. That is significant, right? That is like... loading Marceau's AP or Harugumo's AP and going to town and getting full pens on everything. And of course, SAP is more likely to get full pens. You see there, 36 millimeters of penetration on the SAP means that even an Elbing or a Ragnar has to respect your guns. Now, a Ragnar will melt this thing very quickly. But if you're in a position where you can get shots on him that he can't retaliate, for example, you are going to be taking huge chunks out of that dude before he probably sneaks away and pops one of his little fancy heal buttons. So the main battery on the face of it looks interesting. I am curious. I am not excited because only 3 barrels starts to feel a little bad, right? With the reload speed is encouraging. Don't get me wrong, but like I think, I don't know, 3 barrels, I lose a turret, I lose a third of my firepower. This is the same problem you always had with gearing, right? One of the irritating things that you have to learn to deal with gearing is when you lose a turret for whatever reason, it gets knocked out or, God forbid, destroyed, you lose huge chunks of your firepower because you only have 3 of them. Forrest Sherman here has a similar problem. The firing angles on these turrets is not bad. She can get all 3 of her guns only, 27 degrees off the bow? I'll put the little graphic in here so you can see it. 27 degrees off the bow, and then it looks like about 30 degrees even off the stern. Yeah, 30 degrees off the stern. So, from an angling perspective, it's not too bad. Like, there's some things to like there, but I still have some concerns about her main battery. 12.6 range is pretty good, though. I'll give her that. That's not too shabby for a destroyer. 110 dispersion and 4.5 seconds on the turret traverse. Wow, these turrets whip around in a hurry. So, okay, I have many questions about the artillery, the main battery. It seems okay, like number-wise, there's things to like here, but 3 guns still feels a little bad, but all right, I'm willing to give it a shot. The torpedoes, for me, is where the whole thing just falls apart. Forrest Sherman has 4 torpedo tubes. That ordinarily would be normal. I mean, I won't say normal, but I would say not unheard of, right? There are some ships at Tier 10 that do not have a lot of torpedo tubes. I'm looking at you, Vampire, which is a single 5-tube launcher, for example, and that can do quite well for themselves. But Sherman has something even stranger. She has 4 single tubes fixed. These are fixed firing angles. Okay, so if you've played any of the low-tier German destroyers, you know that they have some kind of forward-facing torpedo tubes up on the forward part ship. They have like narrow arcs, right? They have maybe about a 15-degree arc. You can rotate that tube through to fire a torpedo kind of off your bow. Forrest Sherman's here, these torpedo tube arcs are fixed. These torpedo tube arcs are right at about, let me make sure I get the number right. I think it's about 40, 45 degrees off the bow. I'll put the graphic up here so you can see it for yourself. But the bottom line is, yeah, you can fire both tubes. Yeah, here it is. You have a 3-degree arc that starts at 42 degrees and ends at 44 degrees. And you can fire both tubes in that arc. And that's it. So you literally have to con the ship to aim the torpedoes. And you only get 2 of them. What? Now, on that salvo, in that salvo. Now, these are gearing torpedoes, 16.5 kilometers, 17.9 on the Alpha, 66 knots. So they're good torpedoes. That reload time you see there, 81 seconds, is bad. It has been buffed a little bit. It's now down to, you ready for this? 73 seconds. That's what the latest dev blog says. They've buffed the torpedo reload speed. Mechanically, this pisses me off because what we're always told in World of Warships is that the number of torpedoes in the launcher dictates the reload speed. That's one of the reasons that Shimakaze's quintuple launchers have such a heinously long reload speed. That's one of the reasons that Harugumo's 6-tube torpedo launchers have such a heinously long reload speed. These single launchers, 70 seconds for a single torpedo? Guys, on these kinds of drawbacks, a 2-degree firing arc that I have to con the ship to fire. What is happening right now? Now, this might be historical. I get this. I'm okay with it. Like, from a historical perspective, fine. But 81 seconds, I have almost no incentive to fire these torpedoes. I mean, I'm going to fire them because I got to get some damage out of the ship. But, I mean, come on. Come on. You put it on a fixed arc. Again, probably historical. But then you give them the reload of, like, this is like a Fletcher reload, right? And if Fletcher gets 10 torpedoes that I can fire in way better arcs than this, what's the incentive here? What's the incentive? Are you trying to make me never use these? Because that's what this is. When you go down and you look at some of the other ships, look at some of the low-tier destroyers that have single-tube launchers. They reload in like 30 seconds, okay? Now, there's probably some balancing things going on here. I'll grant them this much. Gearing torpedoes on that kind of spammable reload is kind of stupid. I don't have to like it, but I'll agree with it, all right? But right now, 73 seconds is still not cutting the mustard for me, right? You got to get this down to like 50 seconds to get me interested. Bottom line, Forrest Sherman has torpedoes. Right now, they are easily the hardest Tier 10 torpedoes to use just because you have to manage that goofball reload with the position of your ship because you have to con the ship specifically to launch 2 torpedoes off of one side of the ship or the other. Now, I can see them being useful. There are instances I can think of where this might be a good thing. Well, not necessarily a good thing, but a manageable thing, right? Oh, look, it's a stationary, big, fat Russian cruiser snuggled up to an island. I am out of his radar range. I can launch my narrow arc, single fire, almost conga line, almost British-style conga line torpedoes, right? Into his stationary position. Okay, right? That has some uses, especially if you stagger them. If you launch them every 30 to 40 seconds, then okay, maybe you can probably get one of those floods to stick for a while and get some more damage out of it. But man, we're having to really reach into the weeds, right, to find a use for these torpedoes. I have so many concerns. But it doesn't end there. As an American destroyer, I'm accustomed to having a really good anti-aircraft suite on my American destroyers. Like, I love it. One of the things that I love about playing Fletcher and Kidd, for example, is that when there's a carrier in the game, I can push my little carrier be gone button and laugh as aluminum confetti rains from the sky. Forrest Sherman comes with an anti-aircraft armament built around, of course, her main battery, which unfortunately is only 3 guns, so that's not all that awesome. And then she has 2 more of these 76mm dual mounts, 1 forward and 1 aft. Now, individually, these are really good mounts, but she doesn't exactly bring a whole lot of them. As a result, 4 flak puffs out to 6 kilometers is honestly pretty average for a destroyer. Like, you're not going to find too many Tier 10 destroyers that do better than this. Zorky does, Holland does, but I mean, Smolin does. I mean, it's a very short list. So the flak puffs, being what they are, doesn't bother me. The long-range AA bubble, however, only 98 DPM. That's kind of crappy, but look at the mid-range, 81. 81 DPM. Forrest Sherman is basically tied for the worst mid-range DPM AA damage of any Tier 10 destroyer. She's tied with Daring, which also starts with an 81 base damage per minute. All in, when you take the entire AA suite of the entire ship, she is effectively worst in tier. Now, it's numbers-wise, she's not. There are 2 ships worse, but they're literally a handful of points worse, and that's Daring and Vampire Deuce, right? I hate this. I want my American destroyers to shred planes. I don't like this. And it's just not what the ship does. It's not what the ship does. And the further I get into this, I'm like, what exactly does this ship do, right? The torpedo armament is questionable. The main battery armament is okay. The AA is kind of crappy. Depth charges? Well, she does this really well, maybe, right? She's got two charges, 16 bombs in a charge. That's a lot of damage. So, like, okay, depth charge feels good, but sub-health is going up. So, like, yay? Is that good? I don't know. To add insult to injury on the consumable, on the AA defense, look, guys, she gets defensive AA. Right? I don't understand. I legit don't understand what is happening. I don't know. This feels bad. This feels so bad to me right now. She does get 5-kilometer hydro, which is nice with her guns. That has the potential to make her an effective destroyer hunter when she wants to run down somebody who's hiding in smoke, potentially. And she does get the American Tier 10 smoke. So that's nice. Like, gearing smoke is good. Can't argue that. And, of course, ship in World of Warships, she gets a standard damage control party. I don't know, guys. I have so many concerns about Forrest Sherman in her current state. She does not feel to me like a ship that does anything well, right? Her main battery DPM seems okay. But for a ship that is supposed to be a gunboat, she doesn't have improved armor. She doesn't have great detection. She doesn't have a heal. What exactly is the incentive to take these guns? Again, you're talking to somebody who's never played the ship. I might play the ship 2 games and go, whoa, I'm stupid. I get it now. But on paper, I don't see it. I don't see it. I have serious reservations about the current state of this ship. So keep a very close eye on this one in testing, guys. I have a feeling they're going to struggle to get this ship from where she is today to where they want her to be to entice people to invest whatever, however they're going to sell her. Coal, steel, research points, I don't know. They haven't said. We won't know for a while. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I suspect many of you share my concerns about this ship. Let me know in the comments. Wash your hands. Be safe. I'll catch you next time.